Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm Bill Whittle, and this is a historic occasion because I think it's the first time in the history of the show, we've done 278 of them, something like that, that we launched without exploding on the pad. That's saying something. I actually realized that one of the reasons it's taken me so long to get this figured out is because I usually am like late getting back here, and I just immediately start streaming because I don't want to keep people waiting. But this time I figured out, if I wait another 15 seconds and get the mic hooked up first, then start the stream, then we're in business. Anyway, it's a historic day, and I'm sure everybody watching the show will, remember where you were when you heard the news and when you saw it. We did a show last week, obviously, and I missed a couple before that, and I'm very grateful for your patience and forbearance on that. I do have some new renders and things, and I don't know how much of this I've talked about you've seen before, but we'll spend a little bit of time on that before we get into it. And because I forgot to post the Facebook post today, I will be taking questions from the live chat. But if you have a question that goes in the live chat, and this is just for the people who are here now, it's 75 people, hooray! You might want to copy it before you copy and paste it, because it's going to scroll by real fast, and I don't have I can't look at the comment stream the whole time. So that's generally the best way to go. I'm not going to check Facebook at all tonight, so it's going to be here, and that's the end of that story. So if you put it over there, go copy and paste it and bring it back over here. Okay, like I said, I didn't know where we were before, so I've had 5 weeks, 4 weeks at least to do some rendering and stuff. So like as I said, I don't know if I've shown you these before, but I'll show you a couple of new things. The first one is a test render of Unreal 5, which is really Unreal 5 has got some earth-shattering technology behind it, and I looked at this render and I thought it was great. This has got really just wanted to have a look at the render. And then I saw a back-to-back comparison of Unreal 5 with this Lumen and Unreal 4 with ray tracing, and you can barely tell them apart, which is actually good news because there's a lot of stuff for Unreal 4, very little for Unreal 5 yet. But the thing about Unreal 5 is it allows you to just pack incredible amounts of mesh density. You don't have to worry about, you just throw anything you want in there. Lumen is an amazing technology. But in any event, so this is the first test render I did in Unreal 5. And as you'll see throughout, I've got 4 things to show you tonight. As you'll see throughout 3 of the 4, once the animation is done, then you can change the scene, you can change the lighting, change the weather, all of it. So this first one's called Two Patrols, and it's the exact same scene, 3 different camera angles cut together, same animation, same suit, same background, different lighting, and different music to set a slightly different mood. So let's get started with that one first, why don't we? So that alone is kind of an interesting example of how you can change lights and And music, it's the exact same thing, the same exact thing, the same footprints are going to the exact same spots, but you get a chance to to really set a different mood. To be perfectly honest with you, I did do one other thing with the dark one. I slowed it down by about, I don't know, went from 100% down to about 85, I guess. Just seemed better that way. So I think, look, that's the render quality that we'll be able to get all the time, out of the box, untweaked, uncolor corrected. That's just rendered right out of the box, and that's good enough for me. This next one, I don't know if I've shown you. I know the last two I've not shown you because I just did them in the last week. The next one is significant only for one reason. It is the first time that I've gotten head movements on a moving body, and the head movements and the face movements are being recorded in real time. I talked before about how if you just record the face and you've got like stock animation and the head is, some guy's looking around like he was in the canyon, that's just a stock animation. And if you are recording just the face, you can be looking straight ahead and the head will turn, and that just doesn't work. When you turn your head, people look their eyes first and go. So this one is the first test I've done where the body's in motion and the head and the facial features are in sync, and it's the render quality is not the very best in the world because of the lighting, but in terms of is it going to work? Yeah, it's going to work. So here's the next one.
You guys see that thing up there? I've never seen anything like it. How big is that? Jesus. That is the biggest egg I have ever seen in my life. Oh, God. I hate this place. I just hate it. I hate this place.
I didn't know what else to say. I was doing all that live, and I knew I was supposed to be looking off at something, and I just thought that is the biggest egg, the biggest egg I ever saw. So you can see from that last one that that business of having the eyes track the head motion is really good. It really sells. I did not use a treadmill for that. That is a standard walk animation, and I deactivated the head and neck animations from that and just used the ones that got recorded live out of the iPhone. I find myself still, 2 days ago, another example of this, I spent 5 hours trying to track down a problem that somebody who really knew this game engine could have solved in 20 seconds. But with that said, I now find myself doing things automatically that were just utterly beyond me even 3-4 months ago, just embedding blueprints in front of other blueprints. A couple people have marked about the NASV logo on that. That's not my mesh. I bought it. The guy who did it kind of thought it would be cool, but I guess he got a lot of feedback on it, so he got a set of alternate textures out there. He just thought that the NASA logo looked cool, so he just inverted the V because he just wanted to do it. I have no idea what it means or what it's supposed to mean. That's how the suit came, and when we got the backup textures, I put those on, so that would be there. Now, I do know enough about the basics to be able to do things like change the texture. So before I show you the next two are utterly different. Let me tell you what we're doing here. So I mentioned last week that I had the incredible breakthrough idea that I should have had a year ago, and that is to do the next membership drive not with me pitching the animation and then showing a little animation, having the animation be the pitch, having the commercials be the pitch. So we decided, I think I mentioned this last time, we decided we're going to do 3 little commercials for membership. And they're going to be mini movies. They're not going to be to the camera pitch. The last line will probably be to the camera. One of them will be with Zoe and I in spacesuits like that, but without the NASA stuff on it. And we'll land on this planet. It'll be very misty and spooky outside, and I'll say they've got something out here on the sensors, and I'll say put it up on maximum magnification, and he'll say, I don't know if you really want maximum magnification. I said, Mr. Rachel, okay. So we see these things on maximum magnification, and got a really great model of this creature. Just it's very tall and thin and looks old, and it's got just enough of a human face to look human. And I'm going to have up on the screen, we'll be watching this, and I'm going to have I'm just going to have Joe Biden's, come on man, you dog-faced pony soldier, have all that stuff synced to him, so he'll be speaking in Biden's voice, and we're watching this on the screen. A couple steps behind him, I'm going to have a Yeti. It's basically a white ape with horrible fangs, and it's just going to do nothing but laugh consistently, like crazy laugh. By the way, the craziest laugh ever, and my favorite laugh of all time, is the laugh that begins Radio Clash. If you know that song, there's a maniacal laugh in the beginning of Radio Clash, and that is the greatest laugh ever. But it's just going to be cackling, yes, exactly. And I've decided, after much cogitation and pondering, that this white Yeti, who's just doing nothing but laughing at the time, is going to be wearing knee pads. You can draw your own conclusions from that. So the first one's a science fiction one, and we see these things on the screen at maximum magnification, and then we get into the airlock, and we say we're going to have to go out and get these things. And so we step outside the ship. Okay, hang on a second. We have a visitor who's a little bit late. Hang on 1 second. And I'm going to go down and get him, but let me get these out of the way first. Okay, so they get outside, and I hand Zoe the rifle, and I say, and it's not Zoe, and it's not Natasha. I hand the rifle over to Zoe, and I say, ready? And he says, yes. And I hand the rifle over. And then you see these 2 monsters, this thing. And then you see this giant Joe Biden thing. And you see these huge fingers in a spacesuit glove come down and kind of delicately grab it by the nape of the neck. And then I'll hold it up, and the Joe Biden thing will be about that big. And we'll do the voice like really high and fast, like The Fly, like, come on, man, you dog-faced bunny soldier. Just be like kicking and screaming. This Biden monster will be about this big. And I'll be holding them like that, and then I'll pick up the other one, and I'll have them both here like this. They're about this tall, and I'm gonna say, you're right. They do look more dangerous on the big screen under maximum magnification. So that's cool. Now I've got somebody who's supposed to be here a little 45 minutes ago, but they drove a long way to get here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down and let them in. I'm going to run my butt down there and let them in, and then so I'll play Biggest Egg again, and if there's a little dead air after that, I will be back. It shouldn't take me more than a minute. So here's Biggest Egg again. Got to go to the silent screen, and then we'll play again. And I'm sorry about the delay, but we'll be back in just a second here.
You guys see that thing up there? I've never seen anything like it. How big is that? Jesus. That is the biggest egg I have ever seen in my life. Oh, God. I hate this place. I just hate it. I hate this place.
And we're back. Sorry about that. So, that's the science fiction one. We're going to do a... Steve, Scott, and I are going to do a Walking Dead kind of thing, where the three of us will be in kind of post-apocalyptic things, and we'll have our baseball bats with the barbed wire wrapped around it and all the rest of it. And then we're going to go out there, and then the zombies are going to be coming toward us, and they're going to free stuff, and, free college, safe spaces. We'll basically just go out there and smash zombies. So that'll be the middle one. And then the first one I want to do is this. Yeah, I ran hard to get to that door and back in time. So the first one I'm going to do is this. It's going to be like a Lord of the Rings fantasy kind of thing. And it'll be Zoe and I, and we'll be knights in armor. And this one I can give you a little more detail on. So it starts out in like this spooky forest, and there's a big moon. It's not quite dark, but it's getting there. These two knights are walking through the forest. They've got torches in one hand, sword in the other hand. You look off, you hear this howling, and you see kind of like the outline of a werewolf, and turn towards it with the torch, and it ducks behind the tree. Then there's this tremendous Gothic cathedral that is more Gothic than any Gothic cathedral. It's just really evil looking. And so we'll come out of this kind of dark forest, and we'll see the outline of this thing, and you'll see just these two little guys, these little sparks walking towards this thing. And we're out there, we're going with a purpose. So we get to the door, we say, what kind of fresh hell is this? How do we get in? We see a sign that says, you cannot enter this dungeon unless you're wearing a visor. Signed Apothecary Faustus. And so we're going to take our helmets off and just throw them away. We won't know who we are in the first shot, which I like. So we're both going to hell with that. This edict is 450 years old. Throw the helmets away. Then we're going to start going in, and in order to open the doors, Zoe's going to have an incantation. Barak, 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 Obama! Like that, and then the doors will open. And we go downstairs, and we got our swords, shields, and then we get to a corridor, and all of a sudden, these are really great models. I mean, they're really, really terrific. 6 or 7 orcs come in, and they're making those orc sounds, and they're posturing, and they're running, and they're waving their weapons, and they're doing all these kind of taunts and things like that. And I'm not going to be the one guy who knows everything. We're going to go back and forth, so you get the idea. One of us will say, what the hell are these things? God, they're horrible. And the other one's going to say, they're antiphons. And they're going to be running towards us. And they're going to start coming on like they're going to fight, right? And they're getting closer and closer, and it looks like, oh man, this is going to be quite a fight. And as they're running closer and closer, these antiphons get just about in front of us, and then I turn to Zoe and I say, you ready? He says, yeah, I'm ready. And we both draw our swords. And the second we draw our swords, they all start to scream, turn around, and run away. A couple of them go down to the floor and are weeping. They're in like the fetal position of sobbing. And I'll turn to Zoe and I'll say, that was actually easier than I thought it would be. So as we go deeper into the castle, we're going to pass an area where these kind of high ledges. I've got this weird sort of scorpion woman, dark hair, and she kind of like this. So as we're going through that, we'll see like 2 or 3 or 4 of them on these high ledges. And one of us will say, what the hell are those things? And they'll say, they're shrieking Akagios. And they're going, racist, like this. And as we get closer, they move to attack, and all 4 of them kind of run off the platform that they're on, individual platforms, and fall to their deaths. And one of us will say, well, that wouldn't really too smart. That's the reputation these Akagios have. And I got to get this thing done, so I can't keep going forever. We'll go up to an area. We'll see an inner door. It'll say CNN on it. outside. So, you know, I have to, since I don't have a studio yet in terms of a big staff, I kind of have to write the script according to whatever assets I can buy. And I saw one asset that was just weird. It's not super high quality, but I'll keep it in the shadows. And it's kind of like a naked man, and he runs around, and then his mouth opens up like Predator, and this long tongue comes out like this. And I'm going to have 4 or 5 of them appear, and they're going to be virtue signalers, and they'll be privilege, you know, and all this other stuff. Those we're going to chop up. We're getting to the door. It says CNN. We're going to open that door, and then, you know, some more goblins will come out or something like that. And then we're getting close to the end here. And then finally we have, in the distance, almost like a dark altar, we've got Nancy Pelosi as this spectral figure, you know. And we'll just have her saying things that she says. But all the, you know, I think that, you know, just the stammering and the stuff like this. And as we're walking closer, you know, she'll be there and she'll raise a bony finger, a specular finger like this. And she'll be doing all this talking and all the rest of this stuff. And we'll be saying to each other, what is it? It's like, I don't know. It's impossibly ancient and great evil. And it'll just be talking. I've tried to figure out how to do that. I don't want to, you know, chop up everything, not just because of people, you know, it's first of all, it's hard to animate. And so what I thought I'd do with Pelosi is she'll be out there staring and pointing a finger, and she'll be talking, and we will each go up 2 different ways up this staircase. And as we go up, we'll realize that she's not turning to look at it, either one of us. She's just staring straight ahead, just yapping like this. And we'll get up like kind of beside her, you know. She doesn't even know where we're there. And we'll like put our hands in front of her face, you know, like this. Nothing there. Nothing there. Just mindless babbling of some kind. So then we finally go through the final door, you know, the door of doors. And everything gets dark. And there's this giant goblin. I mean, we're tiny, tiny, tiny little. Everything else we've dealt with is more or less our scale. But this thing's absolutely enormous. We come up to its ankles. And it's this really cool looking demon. He's like, ah, ha, 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 ha. And we'll turn and we'll look up and it says, Soros, which is just perfect. And we're looking at this monster, like, Soros. And then we'll both turn to the camera, you know, and we'll say something like, we're going to need some help for this one. Yeah, we're going to need your help. And that'll be the pitch. So anyway, that's basically it. That means that starting about a week ago, I had to shift gears, and it was kind of fun. And I had to get out of the spacesuits and start getting into medieval stuff. So we got 2 motion tests to show you, and then we can get on with the show. Same thing as before. Like I said, it's taken forever. But, and maybe I need to say the Eye of Soros. Maybe maybe I can make the demon into Fauci. Maybe the Eye of Soros. Yeah, and their comments are coming up just as I say that. We'll figure it out. Anyway, so I realized even though I feel constantly, the Hidden Guest is just a regular at the Stratosphere Lounge who lives close by here, wanted to come down and see a show, so I said sure, and I didn't want him to drive all the way back home. So anyway, I have to switch gears to the nights and stuff. So what you're about to see is this. I have learned over time to combine animations seamlessly. So that's what this first one is. And since, as before, once the animation is actually there, then you can change the lighting and all the rest of it. So this is just a motion test, but it's not really, it's not too bad. So those are all stock animations, but you can buy like, sword animations. There's like 150 of them. You can put them together any way you want to. The problem, since I'm doing this by myself, Martin said it's going to take months to do. It's not going to take months. It'll take weeks. The problem is, if you're going to do a sword fight, then since they're, I don't know, there may be a better way to do this. But we could either do motion capture with broomsticks, which is actually not a bad idea, come to think of it, at all. That's actually probably the best way to do the actual contact. Because otherwise, you have to take these stock animations, you have to line them up, and there's nothing to prevent these swords from going right through each other. That's tedious. But we could use a lot of these things, and the only thing we would need the contact for is, we could probably do that with motion capture suits and some broomsticks. I just had a good idea on the fly. So anyway, last one right here. Is the exact same animation, and I just took the exact thing that we had before. Marish said use box colliders for the swords and tie them into the physics engine. That's all great, but we're using stock animation. I'm not using game mechanics. I'm going to do an entire series of tutorials for Unreal Engine for movies, not a particle of information on games, but how to make movies in Unreal. And I think that alone is going to drive some real traffic to the thing. Somebody mentioned Ghost 4451 said you should put the Bill Whittle logo on the shield. I had to think of something for the shield. I thought about the Bill Whittle logo. But what I did was I found a medieval eagle, and I put him on the shield, and I gave him the white head, so it's got this kind of beat-up, banged-up shield with a bald eagle on it. And Zoe is going to have a hammer on his, because he's got a band called 20 Ton Sledge. So this is the armor that I'm going to be wearing, the one you just saw. Zoe's armor is a little different, a little more exotic, but also as cool and as detailed. So here's the last one, and all it is the one I just showed you, exactly the same animation, exactly the same camera moves, but I added, I just changed the lighting around and added some sound effects, and I did all this in about 20 minutes. This is the wonder of working with Unreal, folks, because there's so much money in video games, and Unreal's marketing strategy is just brilliant. We'll make all of the stuff, all of the game engine stuff available for free. Other plugins are plugins, but they're generally $30-40, something like that. And because so much work gets done in Unreal Engine, there's so many video games, so much money in video games, they're so hard to produce that all of the things that used to be unbelievably difficult to do, virtually impossible to do, the engine just does now. For instance, that weather thing is just a plugin called Ultra Dynamic Sky, something like that. I just go to a folder, I drag the thing into the frame, and then I set the time of day, and then I drag the weather in there, and I say, give me a thunderstorm. I set the lightning to unrealistic levels, and bada boom, there it goes. So, John Pershing mentions part of the point of this is it's practice for the ultimate project. That's precisely the way I saw it too. It's good practice, and the nice thing about this is I can start on this now. I've already started on it, so there we go. But I thought the combat with the knights was great, and I'm gonna do this. No, I cannot. Anyway, so that's that. But in any event, we are crawling towards the goal line, and there are still many days when I just want to just hang it up because I'm spending 5 hours because there's one little thing that I don't know how to do. But I just dick around with it, and then the next thing you know, after 5 hours, I solve one problem, and then going forward, I don't have to solve that problem again. As I mentioned, there have been several times now when I realized I just embedded a blueprint inside a blueprint, and I combined that with a pre-made animation sequence that I did, dragged it into the renderer, and had it all come out, and I couldn't have done any of this 6 months ago. So anyway, that's that. Marusha wants to know if I tapped into the Unreal Discord server for help. I looked for an Unreal Discord server. I really did. I saw a number of Discord servers on Discord that had, Unreal in it, but I didn't see one that was with Unreal. But there were a few people there. I asked a question, got an answer, and that got me around something that was really bugging me hard too. Really, really bugging me hard. So I'll go there when I can. And people have mentioned that they've started a Bill Whittle Discord server. That's great. It's discord.gg/capital F small t 7 small b small c small k. But in any event, I will. I'd love to come and hang out on that server when I get a chance, and I can do that with all my free spare time. So anyway, that's that. It's coming along. It feels really, really good, and I'm real happy with it. And it's weird to get out of the science fiction thing, but it's kind of fun as well. When I get home tonight, I'm going to practice. I'm going to experiment with the torch. So, holding the torch up, I want to see what that. There's a dungeon that I'm buying for $100, and there's a number of torches, iron torches, set into the wall. I'm just going to grab one of those, put it in the guy's hand. I'm going to have him carry it. I want to see how much light it throws and whether it looks good or not. And if that happens, and I expect it will, then I suspect that over the weekend I'll start rendering the first of these scenes for the final product, which will be the first shots of walking through that dark forest. So start recording some footage, I think, this weekend. And, it takes as long as it'll take, but we're going to move faster and faster and faster on it. Okay, so on to the questions. Now here, we're doing them live from the comments section. So I have to read them as they scroll. So here's the first one I saw as we get to it. Bill, should abolishing the FBI become an agenda policy for the conservative movement going forward? At this point, the damage done to the FBI's credibility should be fatal to any reasonable citizen. We now know that FBI informants and undercover agents were not just involved, but were the most violent and instigating of the ringleaders in the quote Reichstag insurrection, unquote. I did not know. I'd heard about FBI involvement. If it turns out, and nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises me anymore. If it turns out that a lot of this violence was instigated by the FBI, then the FBI's become, it's much worse than a propaganda organ, and it's certainly not a crime-fighting organ. It's a agitation for communist takeover. The people who were recruited and who spent the entire Cold War trying to fight communism are now the champions of communism. And I get more and more unwilling as every day goes by to cut the FBI some slack. I keep waiting for the agents, because I got to believe that some of them are still patriots and love their country. I keep waiting for them to step forward, and I don't see it. And I'm not in the mood to give them a whole lot more line. They have destroyed the credibility of the part of the country, the half of the country that respected and admired them. The other half of the country always loathed and despised them. Just like the NFL and everything else, they're going to the left. I don't know why. I really don't, but they think it's the right thing to do. And just like the NFL and Budweiser and Gillette and all the rest, they've destroyed their core audience to get an audience that isn't coming. And I think if it turns out that FBI agents were involved with that as agitators, we have, let's just say we have a very, very clear idea of the situation we're in and the targets that are out there. And as I've said from 10 years now, the only thing worse than going down into your basement and finding out that your foundation is riddled with termites is not going down to the basement to discover your foundation is riddled with termites. So I guess we'll see what we will see. In any event, I didn't hear about them being part of that, but I have to tell you, I'm not surprised, number one, and number two, it's heartbreaking, and number three, it's infuriating, and we're going to need to see what we can do about that. All right, so moving on, I'm going to go with Wazard13. I have a suspicion I know who this might be, but you never know. Here's the question, pop culture question. Are you aware that a single Japanese comic manga named Kimetsu Kimetsu no Yaiba, aka Demon Slayer, outsold the entire North American comic industry by itself since last year. Not only that, but a movie made of said comic called Demon Slayer Infinity Train was the most successful movie of 2020. SJWs are now attacking the manga industry for being offensive and white. Yeah, he's one of those white yellow bastards that we read so much about during World War II. And no disrespect intended to yellow bastards. Yellow bastards fought like samurai. And I'm sure we were known as the White Devils, and considerably worse than that. And I'm not offended by that at all. It makes sense to me, actually. If I'm in a life and death struggle with somebody and they call me a name, I'm not going to be terribly surprised or offended by that. It's going to be, all right, well, now we know where we are. Yes. So the point here is one guy, and I think we're talking about one artist and not a studio. One guy outperforms the entire North American comic industry, and the reason they're outperforming the comic industry is because the comic industry is now so completely left-wing and so terribly advanced and morally advanced and so on. And we're gonna give you Superman's gonna be a gay, lesbian, but I repeat myself, paraplegic, with an eating disorder. That's who Superman will be. And this is the thing we talked about last time, so I'm not going to dive back into this again, but really, the fact that they have to steal existing stories that were written by people antithetical to them is a form of stolen valor, and it's also an indication that they're not capable of writing their own stories. They're not even capable of writing their own stories that would appeal to their own people, right? In other words, number one, they can't write comic book stories. They can't write adventure movies. They can't write Star Wars. They can't write Star Trek. They can't write that for the old fans, and they can't even write stuff that's good enough to make new fans out of people who believe this junk. That's how bad things are. I hear that Aesop says Thor's brother just came out as bi in Marvel movies. Okay, okay, you're destroying your brand, and see, here's the thing, guys. Do you think they're aware of it? I know I'm supposed to be providing the answers. You're supposed to be providing the questions here, but honestly, I sometimes say to myself, this is such suicide. It's such business suicide that there's no rational explanation for it. And then I come back to where I started from, which is, no, there doesn't have to be a rational explanation. It's not their money. They're getting paid one way or another. They've convinced the guys that run these companies, 60-year-old, 70-year-old men in white suits, who don't know anything about any of these properties. They're just cash cows to them. And they are basically telling them, no, the whole country's going woke, and you need to get woke animation, you need to get woke Star Wars and Star Trek and all the rest of it. And then the next thing you know, the board of directors wakes up, and then the shareholders wake up, and they realize this $3 billion property called Star Trek is now worth a couple $1 million, maybe. They're not selling anything, and nobody's watching the show. Star Trek Discovery on CBS aired on CBS, and it came in second to last. It was beaten by a rerun of a game show on the Game Show channel. Nobody wants to see it. Their own people don't want to see it. So my hope is that when we get a chance to show these things in the membership drive, I believe I mentioned this last week, not only would that bring in new members and one-time donations and put some more money in the pot for the pitch reel for the colonies, but it would do something that I've really wanted to do for a while and haven't really been able to. For the first time, it will show the regular viewers and the members what I'm trying to do, and I know a lot of people here in the Stratosphere Lounge absolutely get it, but a lot of people don't, and I don't blame them. It's the whole thing is completely new and it sounds weird. It sounds like you want to just stop doing politics, talk about video games. But this is the strongest political message I can make, and I think when people see things like that, making fun of Pelosi and the screaming Ocasio, Banshee, and all the rest of it, we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how the numbers are. That's important too. Hopefully that answered it. I'm gonna kind of try and go through these pretty fast because I can't stay super late tonight, but I do want to cover as much as I can here. So Bart's Treasure says, "Hey Bill, not really a question, but your thoughts?" Question mark. You got him. Dr. Vladimir Zelenko has been nominated for a Nobel Prize. Well, that means there's still a little hope in the world. And Kirkus Maximus, don't let me forget that question. I want to do yours next. Zelenko, unless I'm really throwing a cog, is the guy who was who was the first one talking about how effective hydroxychloroquine was. I'm glad he's nominated. I hope he gets it, and that would be great. He certainly deserves it. Actually, I'm going to get Kirkus. I'm going to get to yours in a minute. This one just came up from Political Animal. And he's put it up 4 times, so I just want to get to this. But good for him. Hey, Bill, the Canadian government voted in May to suspend all elections for the duration of the pandemic. This motion was passed with only 1 no vote. Canada will hold no elections for government until the government decides that we are safe from the Wu flu. Only 1 member of parliament voted against this motion. Wow. You know, I've talked to Canadians, I've talked to them in friendly manner with people who I like, and I've talked with a few people who were not fans of this country. And the one thing I noticed about Canada is that in many, this is not a newsflash, in many respects, the Canadian definition of themselves is how they set themselves apart from us. And I have to tell you, there is an awful lot of envy of the United States down in Canada, and an awful lot of contempt as well. I've felt nothing but envy for Canada because when you get right down to it, you know, it's a clean country. It works, polite people. You know, you don't have these kind of lunatics in politics until I hear this, and then I think to myself, you know, it's all a Potemkin village. I mean, it's all Trudeau. Trudeau has a press conference. This is years ago. But he has a press conference at a science center or something, and he'd been briefed. He'd been basically told the sixth grade explanation of quantum mechanics, and they're asking him questions about government things that he keeps asking, openly asking. Will somebody want to ask me about quantum computing or anything? So finally, somebody says, "What about quantum computing?" And then Trudeau just spits out what he just heard, just parrots. It doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. And liberals everywhere getting the vapors. You know, oh look, a young handsome guy, and he knows about quantum computing, and he doesn't know anything about quantum computing. And furthermore, they're not even trying to make it a stage show anymore. You know what I mean? It's just like, somebody want to ask me about the quantum computing issue? Yeah? Anybody? No? Okay, well look, I'm going to order somebody to ask me that. They don't even care anymore. Joe Biden might as well just have a for sale sign on the White House, or like a pay booth, you know, like a ticket thing, like, you know, pay to enter here. And all it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And that is just absolutely shocking. It's just shocking. How many people are in the Canadian Parliament? 1 person voted against this, and now at the end of the pandemic, it's not like this happened in March. It would have been inexcusable at any time at all. Inexcusable and horrifying. But now they're going to say, no, we're going to stay in power until we decide that the pandemic is over. Well, the pandemic's over. So, yeah. I have to tell you, that is honestly the most depressing thing I've heard in a long time. Marusha says, I mean, he is the son of Castro. I believe he is, by the way. You see side-to-side pictures of him as a young man, and then pictures of Fidel as a young man. He looks a lot more like Fidel than he does to, was it Pierre Trudeau? So anyway, there's that. Let me scroll up because Kirkus Magnus question I really liked a lot. Let me find it. Hang on a second. Here it is. Kirkus Maximus, excuse me. I talked about this on the Virtue Signal with Zoe today. We did a segment on rebellion. Kirkus Maximus, which may be the coolest name in the history of the Stratosphere launch, Kirkus. His wife, Continentia buttocks. Bill, does Biden's comments about the Second Amendment and U.S. citizens needing F-15s and nukes to take on the U.S. government foreshadow what is coming? Yeah, I really do want to talk about that. So you guys who are posting questions, just hang on for a second. I'm going to run with this one for a while. where do you start with this? I mean, where do you start? I'll tell you where you start with it. My first response to this was, well, where can I buy my F-15 and my nuclear weapon? Because I can handle both of them. Actually, I'm utterly convinced that with a couple hours in a simulator, I could fly the F-15. I could probably do it without the simulator, although it's not a risk I would particularly want to take. And nuclear weapons are, they're just there. So when the government basically says that, here's Biden's botched quote about the blood of patriots and tyrants, and don't believe the gun lobby saying cities with gun control are murder pits. Yeah, okay, whatever. But I'm not going to pay attention to this comment stream for a second, because otherwise I can't think. So when I heard Biden say that, my first response was, number one, all right, well, then we can all agree that my right to self-defense includes the ability to own things needed to stop the government from oppressing me. That's self-defense. So I'll take the F-15 and I'll take nuclear weapons. I thought that was overkill before, but since the president, I'm sorry, I'm not going to call him that. I've certainly never said those two words together. I've never said Biden, period, new sentence. And I've never said president in the same sentence before, and I hope to keep it that way. So that's the first thing, is where do I get mine? The second thing is, it sounds like a threat to me. It just sounds like a threat to me, It's like, hey, you want to come and overthrow this government, you're going to need F-15s and nukes. Okay, well, that's what we'll get then. But it's a form of boasting and bragging. And what he's trying to do, of course, is minimize gun ownership. And one of the most effective arguments for gun ownership is that owning guns prevents the citizenry from being taken out and shot against a wall. So he's got to try to chip away at that argument. But as many, many, many people have pointed out, the problem with that is, if individual guns and gun ownership is such a trivial thing that the government can just simply shrug it off, then how is it that the events of January 6th were the biggest threat to the democracy since the Civil War? So it's got to be one or the other, right? If owning guns are absolutely ineffective in terms of protecting you against your government, which is what he's saying, and my first response is, okay, well, maybe I agree. That means I need more weapons. But the flip side of that is him saying, and so how can this government claim to have been, and there were no guns on January 6th except for the ones that shot, the Trump supporter. So how can they claim that this was going to topple the government when we've just heard from Joe Biden that we needed F-15s and nukes to do that? This is what happens when Joe gets off the teleprompter, and I've been dealing with somebody with Alzheimer's for a long time now, and here's one thing I can tell you about this disease. It can reduce or eliminate your cognitive abilities, but it doesn't seem to deeply impact your emotional tenor or timbre or resonance or tone. Dementia can completely change your emotional base. But what I'm trying to get at here is that as Biden's mental facilities continue to degrade, it's not a pass for these things, because what it's doing is it's revealing what he's really like underneath, and we put together the most effective voter fraud organization in history. Since Joe cannot be trusted to monitor what comes out of his own mouth, then you have to ask yourself what would make you think that this is not what they believe. And here's where, again, I come back to feeling more hopeful about the future in 10 years than I did 10 years ago. What's shaping up now is this. When you get, I've been defending, I reflexively defend corporations because the left reflexively attacks them. Every science fiction movie is an evil corporation. By the way, can I just get this said again? I've seen a number of trailers in the last several months, and virtually every single one of them is, well, we've killed the Earth, and by far. I forget what it's called. Somebody will tell me in a second. There's a movie that says that we've so destroyed the environment of Earth that the entire human species has to leave the Earth and go and live on Io. Io. Io is the deadliest spot in the solar system. It's hard to live. I would rather try to get down to Venus than I would the surface of Io. Io is right in the middle of the major radiation torus around Jupiter. I did a lot of studying for this when I was doing the Aurora movie, which can get made. And so we're going to move millions or billions of people. And there's one survivor, of course, one lone person left on Earth to document how we've made Earth worse than Io. And she's walking around in basically a long sleeve shirt with a rebreather on, which on Io would last you an eighth of a second. See, this is what it's like having smart people for an audience. Helios 1776 says over 3 million amps of current continuously between Io and Jupiter. 3 million amps all the time. That's got nothing to do with the heat, the volcanic activity. There's no atmosphere to speak of. What is there is poisonous sulfur. The landscape is constantly churning. It's never stable. The crust isn't stable. It's just constantly erupting. And we're going to do this. But my point is that I cannot tell you, every single movie that's set in the future, including The Expanse and all the rest of it, is a universe where we've killed the Earth. And I begin to realize, I think they actually believe this. I know that some of these young people protesting and saying things like, if we don't go to green energy in 10 years, we're all going to die. They really believe they're going to die. How disappointed they will be, How disappointed they will be when they turn to be 80 or 90 years old and the Earth is cleaner than it was when they were this age. It's going to be heartbreaking for them, really. It's going to really be heartbreaking for them. And I know they'll never learn this fact because in 2005 we were told we had till 2015. And we'll never see snowfall again in 2010 and all the rest of it. Anyway, that Earth destroyed thing is... we've poisoned the Earth and we have to go somewhere else. You'll see it everywhere all the time. Well, and Avatar, right? I mean, that's why are we here on Pandora? Well, we need energy and we have to blow up this tree because this is in the script. The nearest unobtainium load of this size is 27 kilometers away. We've just flown 4.6 light years. And now we're going to blow up this tree and make all of these natives furious with us because we don't want to go 27 kilometers down the road and get this so-called unobtainium. But basically, at the end of it, you get the lesson that you're supposed to have beaten into you, which is humans have destroyed their own planet, and here they are destroying this one too. And thank God for the nobility of the indigenous people who are going to basically turn us into prisoners in our own world, so that we don't destroy everything, and it'll end up being for our own good. And Cameron, see, this is I don't know how this works. I really genuinely don't know how it works. I don't know how James Cameron can bash capitalism, America, military, all of these things. I can understand somebody who does that, right? I can understand somebody who has that mindset. I've met those people before. The adjective I've applied to those people that I've met over the course of my life is rumpled. They're rumpled people in old, nasty, thread-worn clothes, and it's not a question of not being able to afford them. They're just silly people. So I understand being anti-money, anti-capitalist, anti-America, all the rest of it, but I don't understand how you do that and then have enough money to go to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. I want to go to the bottom of the ocean. I went down to Titanic 75 times or whatever. Now I want to go down as deep as anybody's ever gone. Okay. Well, Trieste is not working anymore, so what are you going to do? I'll just build my own. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever the case may be. So I'll do that. I just don't know where to go with this. This is like Jamie Foxx. I remember Jamie Foxx after one of these shootings, in this anti-gun thing with all these celebrities, and there's Jamie Foxx talking about how evil guns are, and I'm thinking, if it happened for guns, Jamie, you'd be the kind of the funny guy on the second funny guy on In Living Color. You are who you are because you run around and shoot people, and lots of them. And you're making fun of people who never shot a soul in their life and don't ever plan to. You're demonizing them when all of your money and all of your influence and your ability to stand there and lecture us is predicated on the fact that all you do is run around, drive cars into buildings, and kill people. That's what you do. Same for Matt Damon, same for George Clooney, same for all of them. All of them. I don't know. I just don't know how they face that. And I suppose on some level, this is what you run into when you've got a soul or a conscience or some kind of character. I think this is probably what you undergo. Is you simply can't process it because we're not capable of thinking that way, and they are, and I just don't know. I don't know. And by the way, and Zoe is a master at this. He brought it up again today in one of the shows. It's obvious from things like Avatar, which is dancing with wolves in space. But basically, the message of Avatar is these people, these blue cat people, own the entire planet. There's millions and millions of them, and they can't stop a small foothold of humans unless a human helps them do it. In fact, not only helps them do it, does it for them. That's exactly what Dances with Wolves are, right? Here he is, this noble Indian culture. Well, they're being exterminated. Oh, these noble Indians are so much better than we are. I'm going to save the culture. Thank you, white man. And I often wonder, really, I'm serious about this. I wonder about this a lot. I wonder what actual Indian warriors who fought in the Indian Wars would think about how they're portrayed. I wonder what these warriors would think about if they realized that the future was going to portray them not as warriors, but as just a bunch of hippies sitting around a fire, listening to the women and indulging the homosexual shaman and his innate wisdom. I wonder what they would do. I don't think they'd be too happy about it at all. But that's just another form of injustice. So here we go. Marusha with this question's been around several times. Thanks. Hey, Bill. To help lighten the load, what about doing a round-robin style for right angle? There's 4 of you, including Zoe. So each person takes off in rotation. Bill, Scott, Steve got Celia, and I appreciate that. I do, and it's kind of you. But to be honest with you, I have managed to really condense. Dave Big Booty, by the way, just going back, last thing says the Pawnees in Dances with Wolves are a more accurate description of Indians. That's exactly right. The Pawnees that came and murdered people and stole their women and did all the rest of it. Primitive societies are in a state of perpetual violence and a state of perpetual war with the nearest tribe. It's nonstop, it's all the time, and their fatality rate, their murder rate is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times higher than it is in this society. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So anyway, Marusha's saying lighten the load and stuff. I really do appreciate it. It's very kind. I don't want to do it for 2 reasons, 3 probably. Number one, right angle is right angle, and it's a brand, and there's that. Number 2, getting a 4th person involved would actually probably make things harder. Certainly would make it harder for the editor. It would make them longer and all the rest of it. And number 3, and most importantly, I have through some, it takes me an awful long time to start to leech on to, good habit, discipline is not my strong suit. But I have managed to get to a point where I can put out 10 shows a week if I work really, really hard for 2 days a week. So I do Moving Back to America on Tuesday morning, and at 9 I shoot right angles. I shoot 5 right angles at 10:30. Then I spend the rest of the day editing that Moving Back to America, getting the thumbnails and all the rest of the stuff for right angle. Hand them off to Matt, our editor. He's terrific. I don't have to touch it. Scott does all the posting and all the rest of it. And then on Thursdays I come in at 9 and I do Moving Back to America. And then at 11:30 I do 2 zonations. I'm sorry, that's what we should call it. 2 virtue signals with Zoe. And then I go home and take a little break, and then I come back and do Stratosphere Lounge. It's 10 shows a week. And I like it. And it gives me the time to really advance the stuff that I think it's time to advance. So thank you, Marusha. I know that comes from a really kind place, and I really do appreciate it. Yes, and as people have pointed out, if there were 4 of us, then we'd just be 4 squares, or quares if you prefer. 4 conservative quares. We look like queers. We do look like queers, and we sound like queers. We do sound like queers. Let's be queers then. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go to YouTube and look up Harry Enfield Quare, Quare. It's my favorite sketch of all time, I think. Is he a queer? I don't know. In any event, yes, Big Booty says, will you ask Steve to start shamelessly promoting firewalls, right angles, and MB2As on Instapundit? I did ask him to promote the latest firewall. I suppose I can ask him to do that. I don't want to impose on him because he's a big boy and he knows what we shoot. He's well aware of what we shoot, and he has posting privileges at Instapundit, and I figure if he sees something that he thinks is worth posting, he'd post it. But with that said, seek and ye shall find, ask and ye shall receive. I've never asked him if he could, do that. I think one thing I would like is maybe I could ask him if he would do what he thought was the best show, which would be my show. But nevertheless, I would maybe I could ask him if he would do the best of the week, because we do 4 shows a week, and it's not that they're on an uneven quality, but they're a pretty broad spectrum of topics, and some of them are more, they hit more than others. It is depressing to see YouTube constantly dialing them down. Audiences don't shrink like that. They simply don't. And we were doing 30,000 views, and now we're down to 9,000. And when we get to 30,000 again, they'll turn us down again. But thank you for that, Marusha. I really do appreciate where that's coming from. So anyway, let me take Political Animal 87 here. Hey, Bill, I listened to Zoe's audiobook, A Solid Right Cross, and he'd mentioned a satirical show he'd made called Sinistubia, and a pilot that was hilariously called Haunted Hillary Doll. I wanted to know if you had seen that pilot episode and if you and Zoe would consider doing more of that idea, possibly in Unreal, so you can really have some fun with the idea, just thinking of other fun things to do with Unreal. Well, thank you, Political Animal. That's the kind of way we should be thinking. Look, here's my hope for this. My hope is, I think I said this last Stratosphere Lounge, I'm a guy now who's managed over the course of 2 or 3 years in my spare time and around the edges and the borders of all the other things I have to do. I've managed to gather a pile of kindling and some really dry twigs, and I managed to get the flint, and I've almost got the point where I can do that. So now for the last 6 months, I've been striking sparks. And the plan is to have that thing catch fire. And so in an ideal world, and frankly, I think in a likely world, here's how it'll go. We'll do these animated pitches for new membership. That'll be more money. It'll be more one-time donations. It'll be more monthly money. And it would also relieve me some degree of, the guilt of not supplying political content to people who are paying for that. I think once people see it, they will do it. So, and Marusha said, meanwhile, we're here handing Bill a lighter. A lot of people, and I really appreciate this, I really do. A lot of people have offered to help, but and I'm not doing this because I want to do it on my own. The problem is that all of these pieces that people are offering to put together don't help me right this minute. Right now, it really is coming down to one guy setting up the shots. I can't write the script until I find out what assets I have. But in any event, put that aside, and I appreciate the sentiment. Once the first one catches fire, then we grow the thing according to the amount of flames that we're getting. If it's if this membership drive based on the animation is a huge success, well, then we can start hiring full-time people. And I've already hired one guy full-time in Italy, and I'm trying to hire my texture guy full-time in Bulgaria. And I need to be working closely with this guy who worked on Battlestar Galactica and all the rest of them. And we're just about, getting there. But right now, if I had three other people, if I had three Unreal animators now, I would send two of them home and ask one of them to sit with me and help me figure out how to do the things I want to do. And once I've got that down, then there's nothing I'd rather do than hand it off. By the way, I listened to the audio version. I got a chance to review the audio version of John Paul Jones and Dick Rutan, episodes 1 and 7 of America's Forgotten Heroes, and they do such an amazing job. They're just terrific, and they've been so respectful. Bill, do you think would you mind if we do this or whatever? They just couldn't be nicer. On the Dick Rutan thing, they were just like falling over themselves to present this in a nice way. Like listen, Bill, we're not trying to run this past you or force this on you or anything. We want to maintain your vision and whatever. But we thought about a way maybe we could recut the Dick Rutan thing, and thought maybe you want to listen to it. If you don't like it, we'll just go back to the original version. It just couldn't be nicer. It's they're not available yet. I think the first one comes out on June 28th, 4 days from now. And so I said, no, of course I'd love to listen to it. So I listened to it, and the recut of the script. I recorded the script in a certain sequence, and then the editors there moved big chunks in a different order. And I listened to it play, and I said, this is much better. It was good before. This is much, much better. Dick Rutan, it's really the story of both Rutans, although honestly, Bert's in probably a third of it. I wanted to talk about Dick. Bert gets all the attention, or most of it, and Bert's an amazing guy, and I don't. Dick deserves a spotlight. Although you can't really tell that story without Bert, the story of Voyager, and you can't tell without Mike Melville either. So anyway, that's basically what we're trying to do. Have I checked the Unreal Slackers Discord for the Unreal Engine? I have not, and you've given me a link there. Can I copy and paste this somehow? Got it. It keeps moving on me. Hang on. Copy. I'll find something to paste it in now. Hang on a second. Thank you. I'll take a look at it, Marusha. I did look. I didn't find anything. Notes. New note. Paste. There it is. Thank you. Dave Big Booty says Dick is the quiet one because still waters run deep. Dick is an amazing guy, and I got to know him well enough so that I could have just a little tiny bit of fun with him. CP Tome says the Velvet Arm. That's what he's known as, the Velvet Arm. And I think the line I wrote in that episode is, Dick was such a natural stick that everybody called him, the Velvet Arm. It's probably closer to the truth to say that Dick called himself the Velvet Arm and nobody argued with him. That kind of thing. But Dick, I have to tell you, I knew the story of Voyager pretty well, and it was more impressive once I got the actual numbers. But I think my favorite part of that episode is Dick doing the fast forward air controller missions. For God's sake, what's the call sign? The Misty missions. He did 155 6-hour missions when most of the strike package missions were 60 minutes, 90 minutes. He was out there all day over everything, and it's incredible. And the things that he talked about and stuff are amazing. And that's actually, I think, my favorite part of it. And by the way, I like that episode so much. I don't know if Bert is watching this one, but I haven't texted him yet. But I really think I'm going to try very hard to get up there on the 4th of July and play that for him. Dick has moved to that same undisclosed location, and maybe we can have a small 4th of July party and premiere it, because that one's not going to come out till probably August, I would think. And I'd be really, really, really interested and honored to see their reaction to this in real time. Dave Big Booty says, how much fuel did Voyager land with? I don't know. I think the answer is enough. I'd like to briefly talk about this too. Wazard13 says, have you seen Love, Death, and Robots season 2? I kind of only like 2 episodes from that, and my favorite episodes are still on season 1. I agree. Well, first of all, they only did half as many. So I think the first season was 16 or 12 at least. The second one's, I think, 8. But I don't think they're quite as good. I have to, because I did want to talk about that. I think, and I know this is a little bit inside baseball. It's a series on Netflix. I'm just spent a little bit of time on it. If you haven't seen it, it's highly recommended. It's a series of computer animated shorts, about 13, 15 minutes each, 11, something like that. And they're completely unconnected to each other, both in terms of content and style. Every one of them is completely unique and different. The first ones came out, I want to say 2017, 18, something. They were great. The first season Love, Death, and Robot episode, called Lucky 13, is about a dropship and a dropship pilot. And here's one where they handled a female pilot just beautifully. I was just 100% on board with this. She was great. She was absolutely great. The actress who played her was great. Lucky 13 on Netflix, if you remember, it's just really, really good story. Season 2 had an episode called Snow in the Desert, which I like better than Lucky 13. That's my favorite Love, Death, and Robots now. And since it was produced about 3 years later, it's that much better technically. Snow in the Desert is getting real close to being undetectably real. There are moments in there where if I had just been flipping the channels, I really wouldn't know it's CG at all. Snow in the Desert is a great episode. There's one that takes place in like a rescue hab, which is kind of okay, but it's not really about anything. Most of them are not very memorable, I agree, except for Aquila Rift and the farmer suits were my favorite. Those are great. The farmer suits in season 1, which was called Suits, I think. The cartoony looking one about farmers out on the alien planet with these giant mechs is a strong inspiration for my frontier family in the colonies. I like that vibe so much. Anyway, the other episode of the new series that I liked an awful lot was The Drowned Giant, which was just it's just Pop Squad is pretty good too. The Drowned Giant is really, 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 really well written for a number of reasons. Basically, it's a giant of a young man, the size of, if you just think of Gulliver's Travels, he's that big, right? A human being can sit in his ear. In fact, that's what they have a woman sitting in his ear, texting. And the Drowned Giant has a particular conceit to it that is really effective. And the conceit is that this kind of thing is about as unusual as a whale washing ashore. There's never a moment where they're like, oh my God, it's a giant person. There's never a moment about where did this guy come from. They just don't touch it. And it works so well. It's just like, okay. And the reason it's so moving to me. Basically, here's the story: the body of a young man washes up on the beach, and this one guy keeps coming back. He's kind of a scientist, and people start partying on him. They're like sliding down his chest, and they're posing on his nose and doing all the rest of this stuff. And every time he comes back, needless to say, the body is decayed more, and then they amputate an arm, and they amputate the head, and all of that. Finally, just a bunch of bones on the beach, and so basically, it's about death. It's about post-death. It's about decomposition, and it's not particularly gross, but it's disturbing in a really good way. It's eerie is a good term for it. It's eerie, and it's fantastic looking. And just to see this giant human being lying there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and watching him just kind of dissolve back into the sand, and watching all the people who want to be there when they first find him, and then after a week, we've already seen the dead giant guy, so now we'll go see something else. So there's that. The other thing I've been watching a little bit of with Natasha is a Netflix series called, is it Black Mirror? Dark Mirror? They're a little uneven, but some of those are very good. There's an episode that's a kind of a Star Trek thing, which I think I mentioned last week, is actually really kind of thought-provoking. And some of them are very, very good, and some of them are not so good, but all of them are pretty decent, so I can recommend that too. B. Meritor says, Beamer Writer says, and then they try to blow it up like that viral dead whale video. They remastered that, by the way, of the great tasks ahead of our society. Remastering the exploding whale video. It's right behind the thorium reactors in terms of necessity, but they did remaster it. And for those of you not familiar with this legendary story, sperm whale washes up on a beach. It's an American beach, I don't know where. I want to say Carolinas, maybe. Pretty sure it's East Coast. Anyway, so there's this giant whale, and they don't know what to do with it, and people are complaining about the smell. And they want to get rid of it. But Oregon, was it Oregon? Perfect. So they don't know what to do. So since the thing is too big to really move, they decide what they'll do is they'll blow it up. And that'll solve that problem. I don't know if they meant to blow it to pieces and then pick up the pieces, but whatever the plan was, they used 17 or 18 times more explosive than they needed to use. So you see this black shape lying in the distance there. It's it's old, probably VHS footage or something, newsreel footage from the 80s or something. You see this black thing out there on the beach, and the cameraman's kind of behind a doom, and then it's there, and then the next frame it's gone. It's just pink mist, and and they blew this whale for like parts of the whale were coming down like a half a mile away, and some of the pieces of the whale were so big that they crushed a BMW. And of course, and most importantly, of course, now they have stinking, decomposing whale meat everywhere, inside the hoods of their cars, behind their windshield wipers. It's just a catastrophe, and that's why I love that story. It's a catastrophe because it was a stupid thing to do, but I'm sure at the time it seemed reasonable. And I'm sure somebody said, well, what are we going to do? Well, we got nothing we can move it with. We don't have any earth movers handy. Why don't we just blow it into little pieces? Okay. Somebody said they didn't listen to the engineer, Bandit 848. They didn't listen to the engineer. So apparently some guy said, you don't need that much dynamite. And some guy said, well, what do you know about it? And he said, well, I'm an explosive expert. He says, well, I'm a bureaucrat, so I win. And they go and stack all this dynamite and blow this thing to pieces. And the thing I like most about it is that it happened, and we completely recovered. Right? I know that seems obvious, but sometimes that really needs to be said. When the Exxon Valdez spill happened up in Alaska, or the Gulf spill in Obama's second year, or whatever it was, this is portrayed in a way that makes it sound like this particular stretch of coast is dead forever. It's never coming back. It's just not. Just doesn't work that way. Look. I'm not saying we should be running tankers aground. The Exxon Valdez was a horrible mess, and so was the oil spill in the British Petroleum thing in the Gulf. A terrible mess. But there's no sign of them now, and there hasn't been for quite a long time. Nature recovers. In fact, nature's real good at recovering, and if you've ever had to mow a lawn, you know that's what nature does. That's not to say there aren't problems, but it does mean that that we tend to catastrophize everything. See, I made up a word. So anyway, Moby Splodic. Listen, this is not something I recommend. It's really not. And sometimes I just, curiosity gets the better of me and takes me into places I really probably shouldn't go. But after seeing the exploding whale thing, there were a couple of other videos about exploding whales. And they were all sperm whales. I don't know why that is, but they were. And there are 2 or 3 videos of a sperm whale carcass spontaneously exploding. And they don't explode like boom. They just kind of, it's like silly string. It's horrible. It's really just horrible. Okay. I don't know if I can. This is a question here from Ghost 451. It's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure I get all of it, but it seems like the kind of thing I want to look into. I'm going to make a note to myself, Ghost, to look up that term race norming, because right at the moment I don't know what it means. But it sounds interesting. So while I will not answer that tonight, I'll try and get to it next time. I think I get the basics of it. Again, this is the kind of thing Zoe talks about all the time. All these people are talking about white. Zoe says all the progressives and blacks are talking about white privilege are basically just admitting that they're superior. They're just granting the argument, and he says it's nonsense. So, and I generally agree. So let me just take one more, and then I'm going to call it a night. Okay. This is from CP Tomes. Bill Moto Art is selling plane tags, oval pieces of skin from various aircraft they have purchased. They bought a Starship, and I bought a Starship composite plane tag. What's your gut reaction to be able to carry around a piece of a Starship and touch it several times a day, climbing in and out of a daily driver? Well, that's a really good question. I'm one of the relatively few people who've ridden in a Starship. It's a commercial aircraft, that, assuming we're talking about the same Starship. We're not talking about Spaceship Two or the stuff that Virgin Galactic was doing in the late 80s, early 90s. Beechcraft came to Burt, and they wanted a different kind of plane. So Burt built the world's biggest long easy. It's canard up front, twin turboprops in the back. It's very, very fast. I want to say they built 20 of them, 30 of them. Market didn't bear it, and then Beech went and chopped them all up for some kind of legal reason or whatever, and 4 or 5 of them survived. And not only have I flown in one of them, I've flown the right seat in one of them. And not only have I flown the right seat in one of them, I've flown the right seat in one of them at Oshkosh in the flyover celebrating 40 years of Burt Rutan. I was in the front seat of a Beech Starship. And that is a sweet, sweet airplane. It really is. Really, really, really nice airplane. I love the idea of touching things, you know. That's why I'm on probation. I think one of the most amazing moments I ever had was 10 years ago now, I guess, or 7, 8, 40, 45 years ago. There's a story of the B-2 coming up alongside a Starship. Can we take some pictures of you? That's a pretty plane. Oh, for the love of God. All right, somebody help me here. Where was I? Just before I did that quick aside, I was talking about you and Joe, me and Joe. Yeah, Burt developed a fast attack plane, a light attack plane to kind of take the place of the Warthog. It's called the Ares, and Mike Melville flew the test flight on that. And I was talking with Mike in his hangar, just the two of us. And the Ares was a very, very light frame, a really cool looking thing, and had a giant gun in it like the Warthog does, but much, much lighter than the Warthog. And Mike Melville said he would they're doing demo flights for the military, and Mike Melville would come in on a strafing run, and he'd say you pull the trigger on that gun and you were utterly convinced that the plane was flying backwards. It's absolutely utterly convinced it's flying backwards. That's how much kick this thing gave this light airplane. He said it's just like a reverse button. It's like you're just going along at 100 miles an hour, and then next thing you know you're just going backwards. So yeah, 10 years ago, when I was doing what? What was I doing 10 years ago? I was yeah. Sorry, got it. Okay, sorry. 10 years ago, or so, I had a chance to introduce Glenn Beck to a conservative group of entertainers that may or may not have existed at the time. And it was maybe 100 people in there, and that was one of the three best speeches I've ever given, and one of maybe the single best public event I've ever done. I sat there at the table. Glenn was on the other side, and I was going to go over and introduce myself. I didn't know if he knew who I was, and he comes over and just basically kind of crouches next to me and tells me how much he likes my work. I was just completely, I'll fangirl about it and stuff. So I'd written the outline of an introduction for Beck, and it was really funny and a little bit teasy, but really just a nice introduction, if I do say so myself. And so I introduced Glenn, and Glenn got up and he started doing this. I don't know if you've seen him do this, if he's done it on camera, but he does. He buys pieces of history, and he buys like the actual history. If I remember correctly, he bought Tokyo, the microphone that Tokyo Rose used. She was apparently not a traitor. That she was some kind of some story about it I don't know enough about, but she was really kind of a patriot. He's bought Walt Disney's original, was it copyright outline for Disneyland, and he's got all these little pieces of history that he's collected, and he talked about all of them, and the stories behind them. It was fantastic. And when he got to one of them, he called me up from the audience, said, "Come on up here," and we were just doing a bunch of goofing. We were just like Mutt and Jeff up there. We were just a comedy duo. We were having a lot of fun. And he said, "Here, I want to give you something to hold." And they were steel dividers, a compass rather, not a magnetic compass. The things that we would spread apart. So you'd have a map and you'd spread the two needles to the scale, and then you've seen it 100 times in those little movies. You walk it around like this, and that would tell you how many distance to go. And they were old and solid. And he said these were George Washington's compass. George Washington used these throughout the entire Revolutionary War. And I'm like completely like blown away. My God, I've got something in my hand here that George Washington used to hold all the time. And here's where it gets interesting. And Glenn says, "Okay, so now, Bill, hold it. Just hold it like it's like something you would keep as like a worry stone." And so I held it like this, and he said, "Do you feel it?" I said, "Yeah." And what it was these two big pieces of steel, about as thick as my finger. And when you hold it a certain way, you can feel your thumb fit into an indentation in the steel. And that indentation is where George Washington used this as his worry stone. And over time, George Washington had eroded away enough of this hardened steel just out of sheer worrying, just doing this all the time for decades and decades and decades. And I'm holding this thing in my hand, and I feel that depression there. This hard steel. This isn't like iron or this is tempered steel kind of thing. And I just was like, "Oh my God, Glenn." He said, "Yeah, huh?" I said, "Wow." And Yeah. So when you're talking about pieces of airplanes, I love things like that. I love touching historical things like that. I love being in historical places. I was at Stonewall Jackson's place where Stonewall Jackson died after Chancellorsville, and I was in the little cottage, and he died at I want to say 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And as I reach out and touch his bed, there it is. It's just one little velvet rope, and I knew all the story, knew all of it, and then the clock strikes 4 o'clock. I look out the window. It's the same time of year, and just anyway. John Pershing points out that part of the Wright Flyer is on Mars. That's impressive. The Wright Flyer has also been to the moon, and the Wright Flyer has been in Earth orbit, and they can keep using it, but they will eventually run out of fabric. All right, look, I think that's time for me to call this one a day here. Marush, I should deal with this. Whatever happened to the Bill Whittle cruise, the Strata cruise? Did it get derailed by COVID? It absolutely did get derailed by COVID. We were about ready to go. I mean, it was scheduled for May, I want to say, and right up until May, we did. Nobody knew what the regulations were going to be. And since then, it has utterly destroyed, the cruise industry, and large numbers of travel agencies went out of business, and all of that stuff. So, yeah, it was, it was a real mess in terms of what it did to the people that were organizing it. I suppose we'll try and do something again someday. But in any event, that was one of many, many things that got canceled in 2020, just for what? Okay, yeah, there's some great history things coming up here. So anyway, that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, which is made possible by most of you watching, the members at BillWhittle.com. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thanks for keeping the lights on and food on the table and all the rest of it. And also, I just want to thank all of you, especially for the last couple of weeks, and the very kind words and so on. And I expect fully we will see you here. Hopefully, we'll have some more goodies to show next week right here on your very own Stratosphere Lounge. So till then, we'll see you later.